soulmates, we are ready for yet another conversation on this February 16th. I'm gonna let this handsome guy introduce himself in just a moment. We're gonna talk about why Black New Yorkers are leaving the Big Apple and the school district that's suspending Black students more than any other race. We wanna welcome you to FOXSOUL's Black Report. I'm Courtney Hicks, and welcome to you.
Courtney, thank you. I'm Josh Landon, happy to join you on this show and express to the people what's going on.
Express to the people what is happening. We're glad to have you here, Detroit native.
Absolutely, born and raised.
And this is one big family here, FOXSOUL's Black Report, Fox 2, and so you just got off work to come back to work to kind of hang out with us, so we definitely appreciate it.
Anchored to the morning news.
I know.
Went home for a second, put on a different suit, and let's get to it.
We appreciate you.
Anytime, sister.
Because I know this is a nap time. I used to do morning news.
Typically, but we're going to keep it moving.
All righty.
So also, Courtney, what we have, the Rep. Al Sharpton has to say regarding Florida's rejection of Black courses and how the Big Ten is honoring the victims of the MSU shooting. They're the stories that impact our people.
That's right. It's our news, our views, and our voice. And so let's get into what folks are talking about today. As we begin with President Biden, he has signed a new order to fight racial inequality. Only time will tell if it will work. Now, the order is supposed to review what he calls long-standing disparities in government services and treatment. Now, Biden says he's asked for this from day one and wants to make it an annual requirement for federal departments. The new order also directs federal agencies to have equity teams and name senior leaders who would be accountable for increasing equity and addressing bias. And Josh, after our stories, what we do here, which is a little different from what you do on a day-to-day basis,
oh, good.
We talk about it for a minute.
All right, let's talk it up.
So we have the liberty to say, hey, you know, I want Biden to bring that State of the Union energy. Come on and bring it to these policies that, of course, he sort of kind of promised Black folks on the campaign trail. We, of course, our vote helped push him through on into the White House. And when it comes to criminal justice reform, you've got to talk about racial profiling. You've got to talk about over criminalization, and you have to talk about wrongful conviction. And these are hot buttons in our community.
Wrongful
it's like
conviction.
It's like bring it, Biden.
Yes. Bring it. Deliver.
That's it. That is it.
Every single day. All right, Courtney. So Lamar Johnson, speaking of that topic, closed his eyes and shook his head silently as the judge announced his decision to vacate his conviction, making him a free man. Johnson was convicted of murder in 1995 and sentenced to life without parole. The state attorney general's office fought to keep Johnson locked up even after the only eyewitness in his trial recanted his testimony and two other men came forward admitting to the murder. It took about 2 hours after the judge ruled for Johnson to walk out of the courtroom, and he was all smiles. And these are the kinds of stories we do all the time, Courtney, where you have people who have served a long sentence, but there was that key piece of evidence that was ignored. Yeah,
and I'm sure you've covered stories like this in your career. And what bothers me and what is so heartbreaking, Josh, is they can't get this time back. That is what, 3 decades, 30 years that this man is not going to be able to get back. Think about what has transpired in 30 years. It must be heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking because you just alluded to the key point. You can never get time back.
That's right.
Yes, they are eventually free. They may get a settlement, but that time, that 5, that 10, that 20 years of seeing their children grow up, grandchildren, moments that were lost, they can never recover those moments. They're gone.
Think about the technology. I don't think this man, when he went in, there weren't cell phones.
No.
You know, there wasn't the internet. Think about all the catch up he has to do.
A lot of catch up, and it's a problem that needs to be corrected and stop happening.
That's what we were talking about at the top of the show. Come on, Biden.
All right, come on, Biden.
That's it.
Come on.
Moving along, the U.S. Justice Department is investigating possible civil rights violations by a Mississippi Sheriff's Department after a drug raid last month left a Black man with a gunshot wound to the face. Michael Corey Jenkins was the victim, and lawyers claim it was a racially motivated attack, while police say the shooting occurred after someone pointed a gun at deputies during the late-night raid at a home. They also say deputies never presented a warrant before forcing their way into the home. Lots of he say, she say. It's going to take a minute, Josh, to sort this thing out. It's actually a terrible story.
It's a horrible story, Courtney, and you hit the point right there. You're telling the story and you say they did not present a warrant. That's where it goes south.
Yeah.
Quickly. How do you raid someone's home without a warrant?
Yeah. It all speaks to police reform, which we've talked a lot about in light of the Nichols case. It also speaks to, that blue culture, because, in some cases, this isn't necessarily a black or white thing, but a blue thing in regards to their behavior, in regards to a lack of respect and humanity when it comes to the suspect. It's not about being judge, jury, and executioner out there on the street.
It's about trust.
That's right.
It's about trust because, again, how can officers come to someone's home, raid their home, enter their home without the proper warrant?
It's about being able to trust law enforcement that they're going to uphold the oath that they take. Yeah, indeed. All righty, a budget meeting in New York City quickly turned its focus to the amount of black New Yorkers who are leaving the city.
Yes, New York Mayor Eric Adams said he is concerned for his teachers and everyday workers because they're being priced out of the city. The latest census shows while the city's overall population grew by over 7% in the past decade, the black population dropped by over 4%, with Brooklyn losing nearly 70,000 black residents. They say the only solution would be to have more affordable housing so people of color can continue to call New York home.
It's expensive everywhere, whether it be New York, right here in Detroit. I've lived in DC, I've lived in Charlotte, in Georgia, and I've seen the cost of living just continue to go up. The field that we're in, sometimes we jump cities, we jump contracts.
Right.
And so you're very conscious and aware of what, rent is. And I know from city to city, whether it's a smaller city or more of a big metropolis like a DC or a Chicago, rent is high as hell.
Very high, very high.
It is high.
And it comes down to a key word: gentrification. It's an ongoing thing that is happening in New York, in Detroit, in Chicago, in DC. Every big city where you have people of color, it tends to be an ongoing thing.
Yeah, and the stats show that unfortunately for a lot of us, we're just one or two checks away from being in dire straits, whether homelessness or utilities, loss of utilities. And so it's a struggle, it's a balance, it's a day-to-day grind just to live and really just to have the necessities. Think about how high eggs are, milk.
Yes.
Those are basic staples in the kitchen.
And it's also a lesson for us as a community. We have to get away from living paycheck to paycheck.
This is true.
We have to, if it takes us changing our lifestyle, changing our habits for a year, you have to do so.
I know, Josh, but it's hard to save.
It's hard to save.
When that check is like this, and your demands are like this, or your needs rather.
It's a fine line, my sister, a very fine line. But you have to look at your finances, but also more help is needed.
Yeah, we gotta keep making a dollar out of 15 cents like we always have.
Amen, amen.
All right, we're moving on here. A North Carolina school district is in hot water for their rate of suspensions when it comes to, you guessed it, black students. Charlotte Mecklenburg, speaking of Charlotte, schools has a black student population that makes up about 36% of students, but 68% of out-of-school suspensions. All this comes after the district decided to give themselves a progress report on suspensions and found the overwhelming gap in that data. Now, the district says their performance is off track, but says there's been slight improvements since the last year. I'm looking forward to them, putting those stats out there to see what those improvements are, because listen, if you don't address, what the issues are, I don't understand how you can expect better performance numbers, if you will. You can't continue to do an old thing with new ways or a new thing with old ways. And if these numbers are so disproportionate in regards to black to white students who's getting suspended, it sounds like a racial thing to me.
And then also, depending on these kids' environments, where they grow up, where they live, if you're so quick to kick them out of school, they're home, their parents are at work.
Yeah.
No telling what they may get into when they walk out their doors during that suspension and get into more trouble.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is resources.
Absolutely.
On this show, we've often talked about, we want better for our children. We talk about the crime rate and how young people are getting pulled into a specific lifestyle, but it's the resources. And we know for there to be better or more resources, there needs to be more money. So I think it comes down to that dollar once again when it comes to the caretaking, if you will, of our kids.
Money talks.
Money talks.
All right.
Indeed.
East Bay Congresswoman Barbara Lee is preparing to enter the race for the soon-to-be vacant California Senate seat currently held by Dianne Feinstein. Congresswoman Lee filed paperwork for the 2024 election yesterday. Her announcement to join the race is expected to be by the end of the month. She would be the third major candidate to officially announce plans to run for a Dianne Feinstein Senate seat. And if she wins, she would be the only Black female senator currently here in the U.S.
Yeah, and that is needed. That representation is needed.
Yes, it is.
She is. She's an underdog in regards to the numbers.
How has that stopped any of us before?
That's true, but you know, as in regards to her opponents, I mean, we're talking about millions of supporters,
yes.
and she, you know, doesn't quite fit those numbers just yet. So hopefully, as she continues to campaign and put her agenda out there, maybe she'll amass more followers and supporters, and really. Have a stake in the particular race, because it's needed. We need a Black senator.
When you talk about senator, and so, I'm going to bring up someone who ran for senator many years ago, and at first we were saying, like, who is this individual? I think you kind of know who I'm alluding to.
Point taken.
Former President Barack Obama.
Point taken.
It was like, who is this guy?
And I feel like he went from junior senator to like, I'm the president. I'm your president.
Just
now.
like that.
I'll give you that. Great point. Great point. Kind of from obscurity, and then we all knew who he was by way of that great intro via Oprah Winfrey, and then voila, here we go. So I'll give you that, Josh. That was good.
But we shall see.
We shall see.
All
right. Missouri faith leaders, activists, and elected officials are fighting back against the Republican-led House for shutting down a Black lawmaker's speech. Here we go again. Now, the House also passing a bill that could strip power from the Black woman elected as St. Louis prosecutor to appoint a special prosecutor to handle violent crimes in areas with high homicide rates. Now, you may remember a similar upset in Mississippi, where the Republican-led legislature voted to take power away from local leaders in the city of Jackson. I think, politically, it will always be a struggle, and that's why we have shows like FOXSOUL's Black Report to keep soulmates on top of what's happening, not only in and around their cities, but around this country, and to let the brothers and sisters from this city know what's happening in this city, and so on and so forth. And politically, on the other side of the aisle, folks are very slick. And it really causes you to really have to man up, woman up, pay attention, read, do some deep dive so you can be clear on the issues. Yeah.
And when you don't let a person voice their perspective, come on now. It kind of expresses a guilt to begin with. You spoke your piece, let me speak mine.
Yeah, or that how you feel, who you are, and what you represent, and what you come from, for some reason doesn't matter, or doesn't matter enough. That's the problem I see with it.
All right.
Yeah.
The Rev. Al Sharpton is the latest to speak out against Florida's decision to reject an AP Black Studies course. The Reverend spoke to crowds criticizing DeSantis' administration for attacking Black culture after Black leaders and lawmakers led a march to Florida's state capitol. Now, this debate began last month when Florida announced it was rejecting the course by the College Board, saying it violated state law and was historically inaccurate.
Now, we appreciate you being here, Josh, guest starring, as we say it in radio.
Happy to hang out.
Corte, and this is his jam. These AP courses, this scandal, if you will. But it really is a slap in the face. It is so disrespectful. And what I keep saying, story in and story out concerning this topic is our history. Our history is American history.
Absolutely.
And the thought that someone would think anything less is just, it's nasty, it's evil, and it causes anger, frustration. How dare you, not to think that our history is American history, and that just like other cultures' history should be a part of these studies, should be a part of these history books.
It should be, and we're here in Detroit at Fox 2 Detroit, where FOXSOUL, the Black Report is being recorded right now. And here in Detroit, you have two communities, Black Bottom and Paradise Valley.
You're taking me back.
Yes, and
Mr. Native.
Yes, and those are two communities adjacent. that are no longer here. And it was history for a very long time, not even being taught in Detroit public schools. So you're alluding to the point of our history is part of American history.
That's right.
And Black Bottom and Paradise Valley, that's part of Detroit's history. But again, a lot of people who live here, who grew up here, don't even know about it.
Don't even know that. And how many other cities, think about all the other cities where they have areas like you described.
Absolutely.
And not knowing about, generations not knowing about it because, you know, these stories have been erased, you know, or trying to be erased by those who feel that these stories aren't worthy and valuable.
It's a similar tale in many stories across our country.
Yeah, indeed. All right, as many of us are trying to come to terms with the senseless mass shooting at my beloved MSU, the Big Ten is honoring the lives lost due to this tragedy. Several sports teams are finding ways to show their support to those affected following the deadly shooting. The school's basketball team revealed they would not practice in their previously scheduled game. The Big Ten is also trying to figure out scheduling to keep the team from having to withdraw from the conference this year. And as we are still reeling from this unbelievable just act of senseless act of violence and just evil and still shock and still being, you know, in a state of shock and just unbelieving, not being able to wrap your mind. I can't even talk about it. Wrap your mind.
It's hard to
what
really
has
discuss.
Yeah.
3 young lives, all from Metro Detroit, and even more irony behind it. Ariel Anderson and Brian Frazier. Ariel grew up in Harper Woods, Michigan. Brian Frazier in Grosse Pointe. Harper Woods, Grosse Pointe, those two communities are adjacent to each other.
Yeah.
And
they actually attended the same school district. So you had Grosse Pointe North
and Grosse Pointe South.
I mean, I heard the superintendent speak. What are the chances?
What are the chances?
And they were just all 3 bright people. I know Ariel wanted to be, I do believe, a pediatrician.
Yes.
The other young man was a scholar and a leader, president of his undergrad.
And Alex Verner, she wanted to be a forensic scientist, I believe.
Yes. Just unbelievable. And really, Josh, the fallout and the other stories that are coming to light with Oxford students and Sandy Hook
having
students.
Having to relive
a
very similar trauma.
Heart sank.
Sandy Hook, back when they were little kids, and Oxford, barely a year removed.
In those classrooms, in that classroom, when that shooter decided to come in and wreak havoc like that. And you went to Eastern. I'm at Michigan State. You know, brother sister schools, not too far from each other.
Green and white.
I know, same, different kind of green, but but I love the way we've all come together.
Yes.
Michigan State, Eastern, all Central, all the schools here in Michigan, how all the students and the faculty and those families and alumni have come together in support of this situation.
We have to use this tragedy to come together and to learn from each other.
Indeed. All right, coming up on the FOXSOUL's Black Report, Black women are leaving, you don't say, the U.S. in record numbers.
Oh, hey, I'm not mad at it, my sister. We'll tell you why and where they're going after the break. You're watching FOXSOUL's Black Report. We'll be right back.